It's Wednesday, August 3rd, and I'm Tom Young, and I'm here to change your future. I'm here to provide information, insights, and maybe some understanding of what's going on around us. Going to take a psychological approach today, this savings topic that we have been talking about on and on and on about, because so many people that I meet, they end up at retirement. They end up in their late 50s, 60s, and they scratch their head and they wonder what happened. Most people, the average family, sees over $2 million flow through their fingers over their lifetime. And the average 65-year-old today cannot come up with $60,000 total in all savings. So it is ludicrous to think what happened and why is it the way it is. We're going to talk about that today, but first we want to offer our prayers for everybody in the world, this pandemic, this Wuhan virus that has gone around the world. And there is so much confusion from the medical community on what it is, what it wasn't, the vaccines and everything else. And so I don't know what that is. I'm not going to comment on it or whatever, but we have to live our lives the way that we want to live our lives. So our prayers go out for everybody that has been impacted in one way or another with this pandemic, this virus from around the world, from the jungles of the Amazon to the Siberian desert to the sands of the Sahara. People have been touched and affected everywhere. This has changed people's lives everywhere. And now we have this action going on between Russia and Ukraine, war, whatever you want to call it, but people are dying. We need to pray for those who have lost their loved ones. We need to pray for the loved ones who have been lost, that the Lord would open his arms and gather them to his kingdom of heaven above. In Jesus' name we pray. The psychology of what we're talking about, and let me try to bring a quote into this today. I think the quote today is appropriate. I can do no other than be reverent before everything that is called life. I can do no other than have compassion for all that is called life. That is the beginning and the foundation of all ethics. What an interesting savings in what we're talking about. Just another quote from Albert Schweitzer, another great man in history. And it's funny how much of history it appears to not being taught in our schools today. I live and work every day by what I believe is God's plan. And I work hard to try to be able to verbalize and explain at an understandable level for most people what is going on around us, the things that prevent us from getting ahead. And it all starts with ourselves. Nelson talked about that with his human nature, the arrival syndrome, the golden rule. The golden rule is simple. The people that have the gold make the rules. That's what we see happening in the world today with this one world government they're talking about, the World Economic Forum. And these are nothing more than the billionaires of the world trying to turn all of us into a serfdom of some kind where we don't own anything and we just simply do their bidding. And they do that not directly to us, but it's just like the IRS. Tax laws are basically used for social engineering. Now, what is social engineering? They design the tax laws and the tax code to get you to make certain financial decisions and make them in certain ways. A very simple example is government housing. Section 8 housing is where the government subsidizes with tax credits people that build apartment buildings that typically house low-income folks or seniors, and the government subsidizes the development and the building of those properties. So that is part of a tax code, a tax benefit that promotes those kind of properties. Now, within the tax code, there are lots of things that sort of promote or lead us to do things a certain way over our lifetime. We give up control of our money to the financial world by utilizing government promoted contracts, like IRAs and 401ks and pension plans and all those kind of things, where the government promotes savings in that way by giving us so-called tax benefits. But in saving in that way, we take our most precious savings dollars and we throw them as far as we can into the future with very little access to that money, without taxes and maybe severe penalties to get at that money. So here's our savings, and we're looking at it and we watch it go up and we watch it go down because most of that money is tied into the stock market. It is not actively managed, but passively managed, where you do a suitability questionnaire and here you are. So here's the investments that match your suitability. They put your money in these investments and you watch them go up and you watch them go down. The current stock market atmosphere of right now, there's been a substantial amount of money lost over the last couple of months because of attitudes and what's going on in the marketplace. The pandemic has influenced that, etc. But let me step back and look at the bigger picture, because all of these things going on has a psychological effect on you and I. Why are we so passive about debt? Well, I believe it's because the politicians and the government is so passive about debt that they actually borrow trillions of dollars every year to fund programs that they provided for you and I that made them look good and got you and I to vote for them for the next election. But these promises of the future are unfunded. If you go to usdebtclock.org, down in the lower right-hand column, you'll see the unfunded liability now exceeds $170 trillion, which is over $1.2 million per taxpayer. The current debt of the government is $30.5 trillion. Trillion. How much is that? That is 1,000 billion. And there is $30.5 thousand billion in debt that the government has put in position. Now, where did they get the money to do this? From you and I. They tax us. And the collateral for that debt is the government's ability to take our incomes and tax us. They confiscate our money to pay their bills that they are not accountable for. It's like what I would refer to a third-party purchase. Now, how would I describe that? Imagine you work in an office and there's about 100 people work in that office. And there's a brand new young lady hired into a secretary position, brand new, doesn't really know many people in the office or whatever. And the Easter holiday is coming up and there's going to be an office party for this event. So the office elects to give this young gal, this new person in the office, $100 to go buy a door prize for the office. Okay, so here's the party, and here she is. She shows up, and what she bought was a 7-foot tall stuffed rabbit that she paid $100 for. That's your door prize. So that's an example of irresponsible third-party purchase that has no accountability and no responsibility to what they spend the money on. That, my friends, is our politicians. So all of this stuff that we are exposed to, what is going on, the debt of the government and everybody else, well, they don't seem to be worried about the debt that they have run up spending our money. So psychologically, why should I worry about debt? Same thing going on right now with college loans. Joe Biden wants to give back and rescind all of the college debt. Well, what about the people that paid their college debt? Would that be fair? So the point I'm trying to make today, folks, and we'll get into this in more detail Friday and into next week with examples. But we have to realize this is not God's plan, what's going on around us. We need to polish our eyeglasses. We need to be able to see the potential of the future. And that potential is good and it's bad. Your potential could be wonderful if you see it that way. But when I look at the USDebtClock.org and those kind of things, I really struggle with helping people to think differently. You got to get out of the norm. You cannot accept the normal way of doing things any longer. The normal way of doing things is going to crash. It's inevitable. It has to happen. There's nobody going to step up and create hundreds of trillions of dollars to bail out our government in the future. So there's only a couple of solutions. One is they're going to keep printing money and your money is going to be worth less and less and less and less and less. And inflation is going to be astronomical. Like Zimbabwe. Look up and do some research about Zimbabwe. They were going to print bills that were $100 trillion bills. They were already printing $1 trillion Zimbabwe money because Mugabe, the dictator that was running that country at that time, believed, well, he would just get out of his mess by printing more money. And a loaf of bread cost $1 trillion, as crazy as that sounds. But those are the facts of a true story of what happened in that country. When you look at what's going on around the world, people are starting to stand up. That is going to create unbelievable. Now, the other side of solutions could be an all-out revolution, and we throw the damn politicians out of office. But we don't need a revolution. We need a revolution of voting. And this November, we need to vote in numbers beyond anything that has ever happened before in America. We need to vote out these incumbents that are doing nothing but being irresponsible and continuing to leverage our future, our children's future, our grandchildren's future. There is no end to what they are doing. Did you vote for politicians to go to Washington and just frivolously spend money without any accountability or thought about the end result of how they can spend money they don't have, how they can tax us to the ends of earth and spend money that we haven't even earned yet? See, that's the definition of debt. You bought something that you cannot pay for out of the current 1 month of your income. Out of your current 1 month of cash flow, you bought something, you cannot pay for it, so therefore you carry the balance forward. That is debt. A mortgage on a home is not debt because I have an asset that I can actually sell and pay off the debt. It is leveraged with an asset. My home is not debt. That mortgage is not debt. And that's another story for another day. God bless you. Get my book, The Family Money Farm, The CFO Project. You can go to cfoproject.com, put in your name and email address, and get an email and get a cover-to-cover copy of my new book published by Dorrance, The Family Money Farm, The CFO Project, and my new ebook, Financial Mastery Coaching, the Blueprint, which is the beginning of understanding frameworks. God bless you all. We'll see you here in a couple of days.